What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another 3D model. And also, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This is actually the last video of the year and it happens to land on Christmas Eve, so I thought it would be only fitting to make a Christmas related 3D model. So for this holiday season, we are going to be recreating Santa's sleigh. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I briefly contemplated not even doing a video for this week. Because it's the holiday season and I have family visiting, I really don't have a lot of time available. But I haven't missed a single video or 3D model all year, and I definitely wasn't going to let this last video be the only 3D model that I missed. So we are gonna try to get through this video as quickly as possible so we can get a holiday themed 3D model done in time. Now, don't forget, this full video will be available on my Patreon page if you're interested in seeing it in real time, along with all of the working files. So if you want to see the Substance Painter file or you want access to the 3D model, all of it will be available on my Patreon page, which you can find in the link in the description below. So the very first thing on our list to do was find some reference. So I quickly jumped on Google Images and I just searched up Santa's sleigh, and there's so many different versions of this sleigh, so I didn't want to worry too much about getting the perfect reference. We just wanted to find something that I thought looked interesting, so I happened to find these two images that I'm going to use as my main references. I thought it'd be a lot of fun to not only create Santa's sleigh, but to fill the back with a bunch of presents, and also add a few other elements like Christmas lights and some lights on the back of the sleigh, and maybe some ropes that would be attached to the reindeer. Now, of course, because of my lack of time, we are going to try to cut corners wherever we can to get this model done a little bit quicker. So we will go over this later on in the video when we go over the UVs, and I'll show you exactly which corners I decided to cut just to save a little bit of time. And we'll also go over a few things that I would do differently if I were to recreate this model. Now, when it comes to this 3D model and most 3D models, I'm just going to focus on one side. It's not only going to save me a bunch of time, but I'm just not going to have to redo my work twice. So we're just going to focus on one wall, basically this one side of my sleigh, and once I'm happy with how everything's looking, I can simply just duplicate it over to create the other side. So after gathering all of our reference images, the first thing to do was start blocking out our main shapes. Now, I did say we are rushing this model a little bit to try to get it done on time, but I'm not going to try to rush the blockout stage too much. It can really lead to a lot of problems if I'm not happy with how those main shapes are looking. So we're going to try to take our time a little bit, make sure everything's blocked out nicely, and then we can move on to more fun things and start refining those shapes. Oh yeah, and one more really quick thing, I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for all the support this year. Whether you've liked the video, left a comment, subscribed, joined my Patreon, or even just dropped by to check out my work, it really all means so much to me. This community has been a huge part of keeping me motivated and excited to keep creating content. Seeing your reactions, hearing your feedback, and chatting with so many of you has honestly been the best part of this whole journey. And a really big shout out to all of my Patreon supporters. You've really helped make this all possible for me to keep creating videos, and I really can't thank you all enough for your continuous support over the year. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm excited to share even more projects, tips and tricks, and other tutorial-based videos with you in the new year. I'm super excited about what's coming up next year, and I can't wait to keep learning and growing with you all. So yeah, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for supporting my art. It really does mean the world to me. Alright, enough of me talking, we got Santa's sleigh to create, so let's continue blocking out these main shapes and let's slowly piece together our Santa sleigh. Alright, so before we jump into those UVs, I just quickly want to give a shout out to this week's video sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay offers a variety of services ranging from PCB production, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, 3D printing, and much more. You can quickly upload your own files and get a quote immediately, so if you're building something at home or want to print one of your own 3D models, PCBWay makes it extremely easy to get custom parts for your projects, even if you don't have the necessary tools. They take care of everything so you can get those parts shipped directly to your front door. PCBWay is actually having a big Christmas sale at the moment, and it's on until the 31st, so if this is something you're interested in, you should definitely check it out. And once again, thank you PCBWay for sponsoring this week's video. Alright, so here is Santa's sleigh in its finished form. And everything is the exact same. I of course went ahead and just duplicated all the objects to the other side, so this backlight just duplicated and slid it over, along with the SC for Santa Claus. Just duplicated and flipped it over, and same with the wall. So just basically everything on this side is mirrored on this side. And what I decided to do was split this thing up into 3 different groups for the 3 different textures applied. Now, originally for following along in the real-time video, which will be available on Patreon, you'll notice that I originally just had 2 groups and 2 textures. And I just decided to split it off into 3 for no specific reason. It just allowed me to work a bit more freely, especially with my lack of time. I didn't want to worry about really condensing these textures into just 2 textures while still trying to get the most resolution out of the important materials. Just to make my life easier, I just split it up into 3. So if we go through these textures, you'll notice how I'm always saying in every video I feel like I upload to YouTube how you need to take advantage of your real estate. Well, in this video, I definitely slacked a little bit. I'm just gonna say that ahead of time. So I could have done a better job with condensing these textures to take advantage of that 0 to 1 space. But that being said, I just didn't have a lot of time, and this week's video is just about making a fun holiday themed model. So I didn't stress too much about it, but it is something I wanted to point out. Let's go on to the textures in the very first group, and texture is basically the main sleigh, the main body of my Santa sleigh. Now, the most important thing besides trying to take advantage of the real estate is making sure my UV shells are nice and straight, just to make applying materials a lot easier for myself in Substance. So that's one thing I just tried to do, but it's pretty straightforward. I just basically made the whole sleigh, the main shell of the sleigh, the first texture. In the second group and texture are the other main parts of the sleigh, so the main metal parts that keep it sliding, as well as the 2 bags that I have holding all the presents, as well as the reindeer ropes, which we will go over in a little bit. I just simplified these to make them kind of like dog collars. I don't even know. It's not really how an actual reindeer, they have like that headpiece that kind of wraps around their snout and kind of clips on like a kind of like a horse, but I just simplified it by adding like a simple collar. But everything is pretty straightforward. As you can see, had a lot of empty space here I feel like I could have taken advantage of, but I was rushing this one, so it is what it is. It still worked out. And the third group in texture are basically all of my presents. Now, I separated these onto their own texture group. That way it would just be easier for me to just apply materials to all of these different presents. I wanted to have different colors and different wrapping patterns on all of these presents, so I just basically slid some aside so I can have a bunch of different graphics or different textures on all of these boxes. Now, of course, the main important thing with this texture group is making sure those shells are nice and straight. I didn't want them to be skewed or the patterns to be, slanted, horizontal on some and vertical or diagonal on certain boxes. I wanted them all to look straight so they look like real wrapping paper. So making sure that my shells were nice and straight was pretty important for this one. Of course, I did slack. As you can see, these are not perfectly straight. And I honestly could have definitely enlarged these to fill in, take advantage of all this wasted space at the top. This is something that bugs me even looking back now. So if I were to go back, I would definitely increase the UV size of these shells just to fill in this unnecessary space. That way I can just get more resolution out of these textures. But those are my 3 textures, so I assigned a material to each of these groups. So in Substance Painter, I could see 3 textures in my texture set list and make applying materials to these objects fairly easy. Now, I did say at the beginning of the video I would go over some things that I would do differently, and I already quickly mentioned it, but these ropes that attach to the reindeer I should have honestly, or I wish I invested more time. Not only are they just very simplified, like kind of dog collars, but I wish I added that whole headpiece that really wrap around, you know, horses or donkeys or reindeer in this case. They have like those clips on the side that attach to each side of their face. I'll throw an image up in the video so you can see what I'm talking about, but I wish I actually invested more time in these little collars or headpieces that attach to the reindeer. I think it would look a lot cooler. And not only that, but adding more of them, since there's more than 2 reindeer, at least 6 would have been cool, just adding some along the rope as if you have more reindeer attached. And also this end, it just kind of floats and just kind of like stops here. I wish I added some more grip pieces or some sort of rope pattern where the handle would be on these pieces of rope. Maybe something that's actually attaching them to the sleigh so they don't go flying off. I feel like there's just something we could have done differently with these specific rope pieces. Now, like I said, I just simplified it. I didn't want to spend too much time on them, but this is definitely the first thing I would work or invest more time into if I could go back and redo things. And another thing I wish I did differently was just add more variations of boxes. Of course, I just took this box and started duplicating them everywhere, and I kind of changed the size. I have these skinny rectangle ones and more square box-like boxes, but I wish I added maybe more variations of sizes of box or different shapes of box just to make it more interesting. But of course, that would be more time consuming, which I didn't have a lot of time on this video. So I just simplified the boxes, but that's also something that I wish I could invest more time into. That being said, I'm still pretty happy with how it turned out. All we have to do now is export this sleigh, and we can jump over to Substance and start our texturing. And don't forget, this full video showing the full UV mapping process will be available on my Patreon page, which you can find in the link in the description below. Alright, so now jumping over to Substance Painter, we can go ahead and load in our FBX file from Maya. Now when it came to the textures, it's very straightforward. I used all the pre-built-in materials that come with Substance Painter, so it should be fairly easy to follow along. And the only thing I really had to search up were different wrapping paper patterns on Google that we can apply to our presents. So I just, like I said, jumped on Google Images, searched up Christmas wrapping paper, and just saved a bunch of those images. That way we can paste them all into our different UV shells of our presents. But everything else is fairly straightforward. We're just going to focus on filling these empty meshes with some sort of material. That way we can start visualizing how our scene is looking, and then we can come back and start refining those materials and just adjust them to our liking. Now, I don't want this one to look too beaten up. It is Santa's sleigh. I'm sure he takes good care of his sleigh, so I don't want it to be completely beaten up, but we also don't want it to be too clean. I find if models are looking too clean, like they're straight out of the Santa factory, it just doesn't look that realistic. So we're going to add a few different grunge and dirt effects on top of these materials afterwards, just so we can make it look hopefully like it's kind of used, like he's actually going around the world delivering these presents, and from snow and different elements of the world hitting the sleigh, it's going to be a little bit dirty. But like I said, everything's fairly straightforward. We're just going to focus on filling these meshes with materials, and we can slowly start texturing our Santa sleigh. And don't forget, if you want to see this full texturing process in real time, it will be available in the real-time video, which will be uploaded to the Patreon page, along with all the working files. So if you want to see this whole Substance file and how I structure these materials, well, you can find that as well on my Patreon page. Alright, so let's just start filling in these meshes with materials, and let's slowly start texturing our Santa sleigh. All right, so that's basically everything. That is the whole 3D modeling, UV mapping, and texturing process that I did to create Santa's sleigh. I really hope you guys enjoyed this week's video, and if you did, please consider subscribing to the channel or even liking this video. It would really help me out. And once again, I just want to take a quick moment just to say thank you all for the support this year. Whether you've liked the video, commented, subscribed, or joined my Patreon, it's been an incredible year and I really couldn't have done it without you. And I am super excited to keep creating and sharing more with you in the new year. So thank you all for being part of this journey. You are all the best, and I really can't thank you all enough for your support. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It would really help me out. All right, I hope you all have a safe and happy holidays, and I will see you all in the new year.